Hi there! Welcome to the technical analysis session through the Wyckoff lens for ICP. So ICP from the very beginning, back in 2 or 3 years back, people has been quite disappointed. But there's still a chart, there's still price actions going on. So let's analyze it and see what's going to happen for ICP. So this is a raw chart and I'm going to start brand new. So bringing in the tags of Wyckoff as well as some key levels. I've already copied those from the Ondo session I did just a few minutes back. So that's where I'm going to put them in, and quickly I'll just move these tags aside for the moment because I have to adjust the lines. We'll put in the Wyckoff tags later, but very quickly later. Okay, now let's set the key levels first. This rainbow color, nice rainbow color. Unlock them. Yeah, it was pretty crazy back then, back in 2022, that fall. Okay, I'll say for a key level, there should be one over here, but I tend not to put it at the lowest because we know where it is. By then we'll just put a dashed line over there. So this is the level I would say I consider a key level. That's for a few reasons. So let me enlarge it. We see these candles finding support at this level, right? Even now, today. This week, basically. This is a weekly chart. And then a platform period right there. Some wicks bouncing off from this level. Here as well. It can be extended as early as June 2022. When the fall, the drop, initially stabilized and have that initial rebound, I would consider that an automatic rally. So instead of 70, let's say let's get to 30 and cover the chart. Okay, so that's the red key level. That's 4.52. Last session I forgot to put in the numbers, but I've already fixed it already. And then orange, that should go here. Again, similar principle. I usually look at whether there are 4 or more reference points for me to set a key level. This it should go to, let's say, 30 again. So it covers enough width. And the price is 5.82. The tax, I want to change it to 5.82. Okay, let's lock it. So once again, a couple of peaks over here. There's already more than enough reference points just from June 2024 all the way to now. There are obviously more on the left side that we can see. So that's where it should go. Now the yellow key level. That should go here. So you see 1 reference point, 2, 3, or reference group actually. These are multiple points. 4, 5, 6. So if I extend to the right left side, that will be a lot clearer. That's 7.20. And let's also goes to 30. You see now it hits where I was talking about. Now green key level. Here that's kind of interesting because the most reference, like heavily trading area, is here. This side, while there may be some references, it's not as strong as this one. There are 2 wicks down here as well, so they found support and bounce up right there. So this would be a good point to consider as a key reference. So since it doesn't matter much to the left side, I won't adjust it to extend all the way to the left. So this 8.66, let's put it in the text. Okay, let's lock it. Next, light blue. This is a bit tricky because I can define it as close as here because there are two, basically a group here already, a tip here, a tail, two tails here, and two heads here. So it's good, just that it's kind of close to the green key level. That's 9.92 over here, and I want to extend this to say 50, so it touches or like covers those two. Okay, that's fine. And eventually, the blue key level. Well, this has a tip clearly, plus a couple of candles over here. It's a choice basically. I can put it right here, just that after the purple we may have to add more up here. So we can say we have this blue level, key level, at the current point because there's reference group over here, all the wicks that gets to this point and got rebound, plus a little bit of a head over here. So it's qualified, just that it's getting, again, pretty close to the light blue. So this, I don't have to expand it to the left, is $11.12. That's where it is. And then finally, the purple. So, pretty busy group over here. We see some heads, some tails, some other heads, some other tails. This side, two wicks tip as well. I just want to extend this, push this a little bit upward, so these two, the exchange point is right there too. Again, not much of a reference from the big deep drop in 2022, so I won't extend the line to the left. This is 12.72, coordinates no change, lock it. So when we eventually see the price climb to challenge these high levels once again, I'll add more lines to the top, probably just two more, at most three, but two should be sufficient. So for now, let's move on to putting in the Wyckoff packs. So let's start with the distribution cycle. That's where when the accumulation finishes back in late 2023, we started seeing it climbing back again, even though it's much lower than the price back in 2022. It's still a distribution cycle, right? So we have this automatic reaction from the buying climax. We've got a pretty crazy PSY period, a lot of fluctuations over there, and eventually there's a second test right there. Well, to make it simple, probably it's not even a second test because it's just way too low from the comparing to the buying climax. Usually I would straight out tag it as LPSY. I can bring this tag over here because there's another one. Buying climax right there. Automatic reaction again. And sign of weakness. Yes, this may consider one and an LPSY obviously. Bringing this sign of weakness across, though it doesn't seem like it has one, so let's delete it. And PSY, bring it across. Now let's get to the accumulation cycle because we are in one also. So I'll tag three of them in total. The one back in where the crazily sad period happened for supporters, and then there was one back in 2024 last year, and now where we're now, pretty deep, similarly to what all the levels back in 2022-23. So let's start. Let's say that's too early, not this one. That's the second test. That's the selling climax, preliminary support, automatic rally right there, pretty high automatic rally, and sign of strength right there. There's another test, so some people would like to just tag it for completeness sake. Actually, one more here, before it shot up to the buying climax back in December last year. And now we got to this point where we have this preliminary support level, selling climax, always tricky when it exhibits these kind of patterns, like kind of finding support trading sideways but eventually still going further down. Automatic rally, I would consider this as one. There are multiple tests. Let's just take this. Sign of strength. Well, this can be considered one over here. If I turn it to a line chart, it will be easier to see a little peak. But this is the one that has gone above the key level of 5.28, that orange key level. So not to the daily chart, I just want to change it back to candlesticks. Now it has come back to more tests. Not unfamiliar because there were like 3 tests after the selling climax back in July 2024. If I have to really do it, there's actually one more test over here. So we are kind of level compared to 2024 summer. That I'll come back. I just want to turn on this line. Yeah. Second test. Okay, clear. So we are kind of like getting into mid-late stage of an accumulation cycle. This stage obviously hasn't happened yet, but that's what we are hoping to see if the price really going to climb to a new buying climax, much like what happened in end of 2024. Just that the accumulation period back then in the summertime has a much higher level than like what we have now. So basically that was a trading period mostly between the yellow key level of $7.2 to $8.66. Where we are now is almost like, I don't know, 60% to where it was, 4.52 to 5.82. But then, having said that, a jump or a surge can still happen, right? Even though it may become a lower peak, hopefully it doesn't, because in a couple of other altcoins I mentioned, I can't remember is it Bitcoin Cash or I remember there are more than one. There is a declining trend over here for ICP as well. So this buying climax right there, early 2024 and end of 2024, is exhibiting a declining peak. So if we want to give it more room, we'll use the wick instead of the head of the candlestick. So let's adjust. However, this way, the line, the slope will be steeper. So I'll turn this into a white dashed line and keep it in the weekly time frame only. So when we finally see the price surge, if the new distribution cycle ends below this line, this is what I say a bad sign, because the long-term value, even for speculation, is declining. So that's the importance of it. So I'll keep the line here. When the distribution finally happens, a good or better scenario is for it to break above this line and eventually hit a level at least past or touching the purple. That at least is telling people that ICP is still getting a bit of traction or support from the community, that it doesn't have too low of a peak compared to end of last year. But it's going to be a tricky situation now because the world seems to be getting more crypto friendly, but it doesn't mean it's only beneficial for the incumbents. It can mean something good for the newcomers as well, and those newcomers then will become the challenger of these incumbents. So while people see this is all good news for existing cryptos, I see it also a challenge. So let's go back to the chart. Here, okay, after Wyckoff, we know it's mid-late stage of accumulation, hoping to see some form of upward movement that leads to a new distribution cycle, hopefully above this white line over there. What else can we check? Right, really, is it time? So Bollinger Band corner squeeze channel indicator. right now we see a squeeze happening. A squeeze means the purple staircase-like lines kind of getting into or very close to the orange lines and turning into flat lines instead of staircase. That's when the extreme squeeze situation happens. So when that happens, that means a force has been gathering that will push the price towards one of the sides, either up or down. It never only goes to the up. Remember, don't misuse this indicator. So we've got an example right here back in October 2024 where the squeeze happened and eventually the price shot up to the peak in 2024 December. Another example here, however, we see the squeeze happened in April and then the price got squeezed all the way down to the beginning of July before this horizontal accumulation happened. Obviously, more examples back in like 2023. Those I won't cover in deep here. Back to the drawings. So we've got this indicator, we've got the Wyckoff. It seems like everything is kind of ready. The accumulation is nearing the end, and if the squeeze is going to push the price towards the downside, there's not much room for it to grow, right? So I already mentioned from the beginning, I don't want to draw this line, but there is a line over here. That's the deep where the price went to back in September 2023. So that's the red absolute bottom. If the push is going to push it past this, that means ICP has been abandoned. So as simple as that. Okay? So that's the big picture, right? So while we hope for the best, it's not zero chance that it goes to test the low. In terms of Wyckoff, there's a term for it. If you're familiar with it, assuming the price will still go back to a new distribution cycle, that's something called a spring. So it can still come down, do a very deep let's say test to check out whatever small fish that's still there, and then that's when the next move happens. So while we hope for a high percentage chance over here, don't be surprised that it goes down first before it goes up. Okay, got it? Because I'm not going to cover this every single day or even every single week unless it stays on the most visited or trending list on CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap. But next time we come back, maybe the climb has already started. So that's the big picture. Now let's get to the daily, because in terms of volume wise, it hasn't changed much. Basically, within the accumulation period, especially early mid stage, it's always the case. Much like here, you see this bunch of low volume, pretty steady volume. The key is. So daily chart. Here, long stable period. And I'm just trying to see, okay, if I bring in the tags from whichever coin, as long as we have the tags, that's fine. Doesn't matter which coin it is. I think we have enough, including these two. That should work. Okay. One more. Back to ICP. So let's add the text to the weekly, daily chart. Just bring them up so we can see clearly. So the tricky part is we've got these little waves that we're not sure, is it like, if this is a distribution cycle. It dropped so much. Do we still consider these part of accumulation? Are they mini distributions? It's really subjective. I just want to say there's no right or wrong. So let's start with the easier ones. let's say that's the buying climax, right? The PSY period, there's backup and last one support period, this platform period over here. This one is a bit tricky. Let's say that's the sign of strength right over there. And then there was another test before the jump. And a spring right over there. A couple of tests. I don't want to make the chart too busy by adding a bunch of tags over there. Let's say that's not even the automatic rally. If that was the selling climax, that's the automatic rally. And these are, I would say, early sign of strength before the last one. Obviously, there were some second tests, some more tests, but just make them simple. Put one over here. Okay, now the distribution cycle right here. We've got the buying climax. We can put this over here. And this, because it's not too close to the buying climax, I'll just consider it the last point of supply. And a sign of weakness right there. And another LPSY, another sign of weakness. And one more here. Two more over here. Yeah, that's how it looks like. And eventually it came down. I would say that's the preliminary support period. I think that's probably it right there. This is like a very low or very deep LPSY. And then eventually, after some horizontal trading, that's where the selling climax, I consider it to be. And automatic rally, second tests, actually quite a lot of help signal, sign of strength. So not the typical SOS when we land on a no-man island. Okay, well, there are more tests over there. It's gonna make the chart very busy. Luckily there's sufficient space and we have just gone through one. We're still in one basically. So if I enlarge this, technically over the past 6 days we're still in the test. So assuming that's a pretty long accumulation cycle in the daily time frame, and given the backdrop that in the weekly it seems like it's getting closer to a date where or at least the squeeze force is happening, that a bigger swing would come. However, here it's pretty much horizontal trading that we don't find too much of an indication when that would eventually happen. You can draw some lines saying it seems to be descending wedge over there using the candlestick patterns analysis. A descending wedge is a bullish sign according to the textbook definition. However, it is, if I really do this, assuming it's correct, to draw this downward or descending wedge over here. The tip is pointing towards the first week of October. However, if we also take a look at this key level 4.52, there is a triangle over here that happens before the tip. So that's somewhere around end of this month. So the third week to end of this month. A breakout would happen before this point, before it even reaches the tip. So expect something in the next 2 weeks that a breakout will happen, hopefully towards the upside, following the textbook definition of the candlestick pattern analysis, and also hopefully that's really the end of the accumulation, where it gets to a backup or last point of support period before the climb towards the distribution cycle. So that's one indication we can put it in. May not be the most definitive, but still kind of adding value to what we're trying to see. So if I'm trying to think whether I should add into here, because it can let you see clearer what's going on in the daily when we add these lines. So current interval and below. Okay, so that's where it goes. So here you see it doesn't look like much of this here, because the wicks in the weekly shows up as a solid candle body over here. So one would have thought this is not the right way to look at it in the daily time frame. So that's why a lot of times I keep certain lines at a certain time frame, because basically doesn't make sense when it gets to different time interval. So just to quickly show you why I sometimes put certain lines like the key levels across time frames, but some trend lines I don't. That's the reason. So here we've got this going on and a Bollinger Band counter squeeze. The earlier squeeze pushed the price down to where we are. However, if the price trades sideways above this red key level, a new squeeze can quickly happen, and that was what happened back in July, beginning of July, when the price got pushed to the sign of strength in late July. So there were a couple of them, and let's make them closer to the actual peak. Now we're in the daily time frame. So you see squeeze up, and then squeeze up, come down, squeeze up again, and then the squeeze push it further down and up again. Yeah, that's how it happens. So the squeeze can squeeze up or down. Now that it's so low, the hope is it's going to squeeze towards the upside, challenging the orange once again. So from the current point to the orange key level is an over 20% climb, so that's not too bad of a movement if you want to trade the swing. Let's turn off this. So we know for daily it's not having a squeeze yet, but in a few days it may happen. So this prolonged period of accumulation, hopefully following what the weekly will do, this downward wedge eventually breaks out before or by the first week of October, then we'll see some bigger movements following that wave from the weekly. So hopefully that answers some of your questions for ICP. And remember, this thing I mentioned from the very beginning, this white dashed line over here, we don't want to see the new distribution channel buying climax going lower than this if we hope ICP has long-term competitiveness. So that's where somewhere around the green key level is. If the price really starts shooting up from next week, we're only less than 5 hours away from next week's candle. If it takes more time, it will end up somewhere above the green but below the light blue. So if you're a diamond head, hope that it goes towards the higher side above the dashed line, and finger